I never imagined my bags and made my way to Hollow Creek, unaware of the darkness that awaited me. As I arrived, the town seemed peaceful enough. The quaint cottages, lush greenery, and the sound of the nearby creek flowing gently through the woods created an idyllic scene. But there was something off, a sense of unease that I couldn't quite shake. When I reached Emily's house, a charming old cottage on the edge of the forest, I found the door slightly ajar. My heart raced as I called out her name, but there was no answer. Inside, the house was eerily quiet. I searched every room, but Emily was nowhere to be found. Her belongings were still there, as if she had just stepped out for a moment, but there were no signs of her. I felt a chill run down my spine as I noticed that the air was colder inside the house than it had been outside. Something was terribly wrong. Determined to find Emily, I decided to stay at her house that night. As darkness fell, the atmosphere grew even more unsettling. The wind howled through the trees, and the old wooden floors creaked underfoot. I tried to calm my nerves by telling myself that the house was just old, but deep down, I knew there was something more. Around midnight, as I sat by the fireplace trying to warm myself, I heard a soft whisper. It was faint, almost inaudible, but it sent a shiver down my spine. I turned around, but there was no one there. The whispering continued, growing louder, and I realized it was coming from the direction of the old mirror hanging on the wall. I approached the mirror cautiously, my heart pounding. As I looked into it, I saw something that made my blood run cold, a figure standing behind me, barely visible, like a shadow in the darkness. It was a woman, her face pale and her eyes hollow. She stared at me through the reflection, her lips moving as she whispered my name. "Who are you?" I managed to ask, my voice trembling. The woman didn't answer. Instead, she reached out, her ghostly hand passing through the mirror as if it were water. I stumbled back, horrified, as the figure in the mirror vanished, leaving me alone in the cold, dark room. The next morning, I decided to visit the local library to learn more about Hollow Creek and its history. The librarian, an elderly woman with kind eyes, seemed hesitant to talk at first, but after some coaxing, she opened up about the town's dark past. Hollow Creek, she explained, had once been a thriving community of the Phantom. According to the article, Clara had been a kind and gentle soul who lived alone in the woods. One stormy night, she was found dead by the creek, her face twisted in terror. The townspeople had no explanation for her death, and soon after, the disappearances began. I couldn't help but wonder if Emily had fallen victim to the same curse that had claimed Clara Holloway. Determined to find out, I decided to visit the creek where Clara had been found, hoping to uncover the truth. The path to the creek was overgrown, and the dense forest seemed to close in around me as I walked deeper into the woods. The further I went, the colder the air became, and the light began to fade, even though it was still midday. The trees stood tall and menacing, their branches twisted into unnatural shapes. It was as if the forest itself was alive, watching my every move. As I reached the creek, I felt a sense of foreboding. The water was dark and still, reflecting the cloudy sky above. I couldn't see any signs of life, no birds, no insects, nothing. It was as if the area had been abandoned by the living. I knelt by the water's edge, searching for any clues that might lead me to Emily. That's when I noticed something strange, a set of footprints in the mud, leading from the creek into the woods. The prints were faint, almost as if they were fading away, but they were clearly those of a woman's shoes. I followed the footprints deeper into the forest, my heart pounding in my chest. The trees grew thicker, their twisted branches forming a canopy that blocked out the sun. The air was thick with mist, and I could barely see a few feet in front of me. But I pressed on, driven by the hope of finding Emily. Suddenly, I heard the sound of water flowing nearby. I pushed through the underbrush and found myself at a small, secluded pond. The water was black as night, and as I approached, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A figure standing in the water, staring at me with hollow, empty eyes. The figure in the pond was the same woman I had seen in the mirror. Her ghostly form hovered above the water, her tattered dress billowing in the breeze. Her eyes, dark and vacant, seemed to bore into my soul as she watched me. I knew then that I was face to face with the Phantom of Hollow Creek. I wanted to run, but something held me in place. I could feel her sorrow, her pain, and her longing for something lost. It was as if she was trying to communicate with me, to tell me something important. I took a step closer, my fear momentarily forgotten. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The phantom didn't speak, but she slowly lifted her arm and pointed to the far side of the pond. I followed her gaze and saw something glinting in the water, an old rusted locket. I waded into the cold, murky water and retrieved the locket, my hands trembling as I opened it. Inside was a small, faded photograph of a young woman, Clara Holloway. The moment I touched the locket, the phantom let out a mournful wail that echoed through the forest. The ground beneath me trembled, and the water began to churn violently. The air grew colder, and I felt a powerful force pulling me down, dragging me toward the depths of the pond. But just as I thought I would be swallowed by the darkness, the phantom's grip on me loosened. I looked up and saw her fading, her form becoming more transparent with each passing second. She had found what she was looking for, and now she was finally at peace. As the phantom disappeared, the water grew still once more. I climbed out of the pond, clutching the locket tightly in my hand. I knew that the key to finding Emily lay within the locket and the secrets it held. Returning to Emily's house, I couldn't shake the feeling that the locket held more than just a photograph. There was something hidden within, something that might lead me to the truth. I carefully pried open the locket's delicate hinges and found a tiny piece of folded paper tucked inside. It was a fragment of a journal, yellowed with age and barely legible. The journal entry was written in Clara's hand, detailing her final days. She wrote of strange occurrences, of being watched, of hearing voices calling her name, and of dreams that left her shaken and terrified. But the most chilling part was her account of a man who visited her in those dreams, a dark figure who promised her eternal life in exchange for her soul. Clara had resisted the man's advances, but she grew weaker with each passing day. She knew that something terrible was coming, something she couldn't escape. The last line of the entry sent a shiver down my spine. "He will come for me, and when he does, I will be lost forever." It was clear that the man in Clara's dreams was no ordinary human. He was the one responsible for the curse that had plagued Hollow Creek for generations. And now he had set his sights on Emily. With renewed determination, I knew I had to find this man, this dark force, and stop him before it was too late. But first, I needed to find out where Emily was being held. The journal fragment mentioned a place deep within the woods, a place where the boundary between our world and the spirit world was thin. It was there that I would find Emily, and it was there that I would confront the source of the curse. Armed with the knowledge from Clara's journal, I ventured deeper into the woods, guided by a sense of urgency and a growing connection to the spirits that haunted Hollow Creek. The forest was darker than before, the trees towering above me like ancient sentinels. The air was thick with mist, and the silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves. As I walked, I felt a strange pull, as if something was drawing me toward a specific place. The further I went, the more disoriented I became. The landscape seemed to shift and change, and making it difficult to breathe. But I pushed forward, determined to find Emily and end the curse once and for all. As I reached the heart of the spirit world, I saw a figure standing in the distance, his form shrouded in darkness. He turned to face me, his eyes glowing with an unnatural light. It was the man from Clara's journal, the one who had promised her eternal life in exchange for her soul. His gaze bore into me, and I could feel his power, a cold, malevolent energy that sent a chill down my spine. The man stepped forward, his movements slow and deliberate, as if he had all the time in the world. His presence was overwhelming, and I felt a sense of dread wash over me. But I couldn't back down now, not when Emily's life was at stake. "You have come far," the man said, his voice deep and resonant, echoing through the spirit world. "But you are too late. The girl is already mine." I clenched my fists, trying to steady my nerves. "Where is she? What have you done to her?" The man smiled, a cruel, twisted grin that sent shivers down my spine. "She is with me, in this world and the next. She belongs to me now, just as Clara did." I felt a surge of anger, fueled by the thought of Emily trapped in this nightmarish realm. "I won't let you take her. I'll stop you, just as Clara tried to stop you." The man laughed, a dark, hollow sound that echoed through the spirit world. "Clara was weak, and so are you. You cannot defeat me, I am eternal, and I will take what is mine. But I refused to give in to fear. I knew that the only way to defeat him was to confront him head on, to use the connection I had formed with the spirits of Hollow Creek. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the locket, holding it tightly in my hand. The man's eyes widened as he saw the locket, and I could see a flicker of fear in his gaze. "This belonged to Clara," I said, my voice steady, "and it will be your undoing." The man's expression darkened, and he lunged at me, his form shifting into a dark, swirling mass of shadows. I braced myself for the impact, but as he drew near, the locket began to glow with a bright, ethereal light. The light grew stronger, pushing back the darkness and forcing the man to retreat. He howled in anger, his form flickering and fading as the light from the locket consumed him. I could feel his power waning, his hold on the spirit world alive, her breathing steady and her face peaceful. I rushed to her side, relieved beyond words that she was safe. Gently I shook her shoulder, calling her name until she stirred and opened her eyes. Where am I?" she asked, her voice weak and disoriented. "You're safe," I said, helping her to sit up. "You're back in Hollow Creek. It's over." Emily looked around, confusion and fear in her eyes. I I remember the man. He took me, but then there was light and I was here." I nodded, holding up the locket. "Clara's locket. It was the key to breaking the curse. The man is gone, and you're free." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she realized what had happened. She hugged me tightly, her body trembling with relief. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "You saved me." As I held her, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The curse was lifted, the phantom of Hollow Creek was at rest, and Emily was safe. The nightmare was finally over. In the days that followed, life in Hollow Creek returned to normal. The town, once shrouded in darkness and fear, was now filled with light and hope. The disappearances had stopped, and the legend of the Phantom of Hollow Creek became just that, a legend. Emily and I spent time together, reflecting on the events that had transpired. We both knew that we had been through something extraordinary, something that would change us forever. But we also knew that we had survived, and that was what mattered most. As I prepared to leave Hollow Creek, I took one last look at the town that had become so important to me. The memories of what had happened would stay with me forever, but so would the knowledge that we had faced the darkness and come out stronger on the other side. And as I walked away from Hollow Creek, the locket still in my pocket, I knew that I would never forget the phantom or the courage it took to confront the darkness. But I also knew that I had found a new strength within myself, a strength that would carry me through whatever challenges lay ahead. The past had been put to rest and the future was ours to shape.